is tuning in live. All right. We're on Biz by Sell here. We're looking at businesses in Florida in the pet services industry that are for sale right now. So we decided we wanted to hone in on a little bit of a niche today. I'm Brody Vincent and my host,
Ryan Santo, as always.
We are talking about businesses that are actually listed online to be bought. So if you're someone who wants to sell their business, you might be able to learn what goes into the process of selling your business. If you want to buy a business, you might be able to learn how that works a little bit and what to look at. So we're going to go ahead and look at one of these pet services business and just give a little bit of our opinion of what's going on here and what might be the best practices if you were looking to buy something like this and whether or not it's a good deal. Ryan, do you see any that pique your interest right off the bat here?
Well, I think, right off the bat, that busy upscale dog resort, it has the right two words. It has a price and it has cash flow.
Let's look at this one. So right off the bat here, it says seller financing available. This is, that's always a good thing to see. That means they've got some flexibility on how you could buy it. This is a dog resort that does boarding, daycare, grooming, and training. And part of the reason we decided to look into this particular niche is that Ryan actually comes from this world. So Ryan's family has a dog training business, and they do a few different things other than dog training. But Ryan comes from this business, knows it very well. And so he's got a particular level of insight to talk about here. So $125,000 in cash flow for an asking price of $300,000. It's actually a decent deal. It's a little bit less than a 3 times multiple. It doesn't say much in here about rent or anything like that. It does say that there's about $125,000 worth of equipment in the business. So altogether, off the bat, this looks like a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I definitely think that looks about right. You make $520, and at the end of the day, you're left over about $125-ish. I think, based on location, they're in the Panhandle. It said so. You're really gonna, like any service business, your prices are dictated by where your location and what's available to you. Oh, what's up, Devin?
Devin, thanks for tuning in. Devin says Ryan is in his chair. That is usually Devin's chair.
Well, thanks for letting me borrow today, Devin. I appreciate you.
Johnston, thanks for tuning in, man.
Hey, Johnston.
Glad to have you. What do you guys think of this this pet business here? It's a dog resort where they do boarding, daycare, grooming, and training. Is this something you guys would want to own?
It's one of, I think,
put it in the chat.
Devin is correct. It's very hands-on. My mom built her school, her daycare, training, and grooming ground up, and for most of her life was there 6 days a week, 12 hours a day for the most part. So it's very, staffing is a concern because you want to charge prices that people will pay, but you also want to maintain a staff that is not only trained as, some of them be trainers, daycare, but in proper handling, different protocols for animal care. I mean, it's very intensive to train people. So you want to make sure that you're getting people who are going to be long-term with you. And it's expensive. I mean, the insurance, the FF&E, that's a low one, I think, considering
that's less equipment than you would expect to be in a business this size.
Yeah. Look, if you look up what one grooming table costs, and then the repairs for it, just kennels alone can put you into the 50 to 60,000 if you got some mid to high level ones. So I think they're probably doing very well, although they're probably very lean. I would assume the grooming operation isn't as big, but boarding is interesting because boarding requires certain state licenses and approvals. So that's a whole nother ball game to get approved for that. So the fact they have the boarding thing means there's a lot of untapped money.
Johnston says potentially easy to scale. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan, having been in the business a little bit?
You could scale. Yeah, scaling is it is easy if they would cut out the grooming part, you have a lot easier thing, because if you install a brand, a good system of operations and training, you can plug and play into any major areas. So, I mean, Chauncey's got a really good eye for this stuff. So anybody who's following wants to learn more, go check out Chauncey's stuff. He's great. But when you get into that grooming thing, you know, you're handling at the end of the day, these are people's animals. This is some of the most precious things in their life. You give them a bad haircut. Oh my God. Like, it's like, I mean, I had a husky, I know, but like, man, that's,
What about
That's
this comment from Devin here? He said he thought the FF&E was a red flag. You would expect a larger established operation. He says, this tells me this is all about the person's personal connections to scale.
that's a very good analysis, Devin, as always. Devin's incredibly smart, everybody. So for me, it's one of those things where it's probably, maybe they had a lot of maybe they are dog people, and as dog people do, they have a lot of crates from having many dogs. So maybe they have some of the old school wire crates that are there, and they're using some of their own stuff from their house. Maybe they have people who donate stuff, because a lot of times when, you know, so unfortunately people's dogs pass away. Sometimes at my mom's school, they would be like, hey, you can have the crate. Like, we just, you know, we need some time to heal. And they would just donate stuff. So maybe they're only accounting for certain equipment. Maybe they're not counting everything, or maybe they've been graciously given, like you said, the scale, and maybe a lot of personal connections in industry of people just giving them stuff. So it's definitely it's an industry where it is, like you said, connection based and very homegrown for the most part. There's a reason that you don't see a lot of best friends everywhere. It's because you have to be very particular in your markets and your offerings for these people. Because remember, you can mess up a person's stuff pretty easily in many businesses individually, and people aren't as bad. If you look, you know the feeling when your dog's nail gets clipped short and he yelps, and you get really upset. That's what you're dealing with all day. So it's high, there's a high level of intensity and care that has to go in, and you can't mess with somebody's trust in their animal. Otherwise, you completely nuke your business for quite a while there if you mess up.
So true. Another thing Devin said here is, he's commenting on the people aspect of it. He's saying being good with animals is an art. Not everyone can handle this. I would imagine that means the staffing is difficult. Like, it's difficult to find the right staff. How can you possibly go about finding the right people that will approach this with the level of care that is needed to keep that brand reputation intact?
It's multiple. It's a 2 to 3 screening process minimum normally, and the first one is just personality. Are you reliable? Secondly, you want to do a background check of the person, kind of like their experience with animals. To say, a lot of people from my mom's school came from shelter work and vet tech backgrounds, or some of the ones that she's attracted now actually compete at sport dog levels, so they are established in the industry already in a sense. And my mom does a 1 shift unpaid, just like a shadow. You come in for a shift, you don't touch anything, you're just shadowing. And then that's like, hey, how did you feel about this? This is how we do things. Can you handle this? And then you're shadowing paid for another 3 weeks. And you're also taking a number of online certification courses through different bodies that dictate animal care, safety, and handling. So it's very intensive, and everybody loves animals for the most part. So it's easy to find people who love animals, but finding people who are going to be as intense, you put them through that ringer and they will naturally just drop off if they can't handle it. So you really see that commitment and money sink into them.
And one other thing we've got here is, he was asking, what's the repair/replace rate of the equipment? Like, does a lot of this equipment have to get replaced regularly? Is that something that you're constantly turning and burning? Does it wear down quickly, or does this equipment last fairly long?
With proper maintenance, and by maintenance I mean the crate pans, the plastic crate pan bottoms, you'll be going through those, sometimes monthly, a couple of those, but those are fairly cheap. Kennels, for the most part, are fairly durable as long as they're not thrown about. And if you buy the nice kennels, which are between $400 to sometimes the $900 kennels that can withstand 2,000 pounds of force, those tend to last a lifetime, and they're backed by those. So it depends on how you're staffing it. Grooming equipment, it takes basic maintenance. You clean out your equipment like you would a mechanic, anything that you would mechanically do. Just clean it out, and it'll last you a while. But as always, buy cheap, get cheap, buy once, cry once, and with a lot of that equipment. So you can do very well. And if you hire somebody who's experienced in the industry, 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you what to buy and they'll know the maintenance around it. So you'll save a lot of costs bringing in experience. And groomers predominantly work hourly plus tipped. So when you're looking to do grooming, especially, you want to bring in somebody who maybe didn't get a good cut at their last shop, who wants to establish themselves under a safety brand and allow them to make that good money off of the clients they bring with them on top of the ones that you provide them. So it can be very mutually beneficial.
Interesting.
Last of lifetime equipment would be a good excuse for an early investment. Yeah. Yes, that's 100% correct, Devin.
That would.
I think this one could be good for somebody who wants a second career. If you're looking to really get into that space, if you don't mind, you're gonna make mistakes. God willing, nobody gets seriously hurt, but you're gonna have somebody who says that Fluffy needs Poland Spring bottled water, and you're gonna give her tap one time, and when they ask and they see that there's 6 Poland Spring bottles instead of 7, and they lose their mind. That's the type of client that you might have to deal with from time to time. People are very sensitive about that, even the stuff that doesn't matter, which that's a true story. A woman actually brought in a case of Fiji water and said her dog only drinks Fiji water. So we had to give the dog Fiji all day. It was wild. So if you're good with people and you're, okay, some sleepless nights wondering, making sure that your dogs are taken care of, boarding, we don't do that. It's a lot of headache, but we scaled it out. We have cameras across the entire facility. We would only feel comfortable if we had at least 2 people on staff for an evening. So if you're doing boarding here, I don't know what their nighttime staff looks like, but if I had a place like this, I'd be having at least 1 to 2 people, depending on the size, overnight with the animals. God forbid they needed something or something were to happen. Animals can have strokes in the night too, and you want to, make sure you're there to immediately jump on that and get that taken care of, which we train for as well. So it's one of those ones where I think there's something beautiful about coming into work and then immediately having people hand you the most precious thing in their lives and being able to play with it and take care of it for the day. But I also understand that there's a lot of stress and anxiety and just you have to really be about this life. I think that's said anything, but this is not a half in, half out thing. You're in or you're not.
I would agree. Yeah. So ultimate consensus there is you've really got to be able to handle that high pressure stress for this one. And I would say, to add to that, obviously this particular business is, you can see that there's $125,000 in cash flow. So someone buying this would probably be buying this to just give themselves a good income. I mean, $125,000 in cash flow per year. That's a pretty good income to live off of. A lot of people want to hit that 6-figure mark. And if you really like pets and you want to make your money taking care of people's pets all day long, that's a pretty good business.
Yeah. He's saying it's a lot of out-of-towners, vacation people who maybe can't have their pet with them. So you might have a seasonality risk there. Not risk, but
12 employees. So there's a full team running the whole thing.
8,500 square foot, not too bad. It's a pretty respectable one. For comparison, my mom's running about 100 people, and hers is 30,000 square feet. So
that sounds like it checks out.
It's comparable. Yeah, I'd say that's good. You'd want to make sure. I mean, this is one where, everybody's been saying in the chat, owner involvement might be high. So that also means maybe staff attachment to the owner is high. So taking that over might be something where you want some help segueing, because maybe those people are only there because of the owner.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's the case with any business that you might be buying. You really want to buy one that the people in the business are going to be staying around. The reason for selling is relocating. I would want to dig into that a little bit more and understand if they're relocating because the business isn't doing great. That could be a point of concern. Although this business does seem to have pretty good margins. I like that they have a little bit of a growth plan put in here, that there's some things they've thought of that could be a good way to grow it. That being said, it doesn't necessarily sound that fleshed out. What's your read on the growth plan there, Ryan?
Board and train is massive. And that also depends, on the quality of the training. in the sense of like, do they have a do they have a repeat customer base already? Like if somebody gets a puppy, are they going to be, your hour of training, maybe for an average trainer, we'll say, I think in New Jersey, maybe $100 something bucks for an hour private one-on-one. Board and trains, they're living with a trainer, they're going to daycare, they're training, but they're basically living that life of the following all the training. That's probably maybe 300 something a day on the low end. So that can be very lucrative, but remember, you're also probably splitting that with your trainer as well. So you're paying them, they're taking a cut, and then you take yours. So there's a lot to be said for that, but it's all about how much can you charge for your area. I think up north, they're pushing like 400 to 800 a night, depending on the trainer. And it's not slow. There's a wait list, but that the area tends to have people who work in sectors where they can pay that. So for this, you'd have to just gauge that, but it can be very lucrative. Enrichment days. Enrichment should always be a part of the curriculum.
What does that mean for this enrichment days?
It means that they would do things with the dogs beyond just like putting it, like instead of just saying go play in the yard with toys, it'd be a much more engaged activity. So they'd be on walks, and on the walks they'd maybe do like certain drop some food in front of them and then make them sit. So and start building some of those, like reinforcing some of the training stuff, enriching them, buying certain toys and certain activities. We've all seen the ones where they like kind of move the stuff around and they have to find the toy under it. Those are really good for the brain as well. If they have the the bouncy balls that people stand on to balance, dogs really need core workouts as well. And it can also help build muscles in their bodies they don't use as much. So those are really good if they're trained on how to do those sort of muscular activities and doing like basic rehab if they hurt themselves. I do think those are things that, should be rotated into the curriculum for the people working there as kind of a standard. But I think that's a good way to start it. And seminars, that just means that you're having somebody who knows something that hopefully your clientele are interested in coming to talk about it. So if you have a very active training clientele, you can definitely get some people interested, like nose work, scent work, detection work. Like we had a guy from Australia come who did Schutzen, which is like that crazy sport where like they train the dogs to like bite on command.
Oh, wow.
The guys with the bite suits and stuff. Yeah. He was super cool. But we had a full sellout. But
that's interesting.
Yeah. So if you build your clientele right and they're focused on the training and if the training is the forefront and everything else is in conjunction with it, you will build a very solid base.
One thing it says here is many clients are referred by local vets. In your experience, is that a pretty good source of clientele for this type of business?
Yeah. I think that's one of your best referral programs, actually. If you have a business like this, that's very safe. That means number one of them is probably their facility vet, which a facility, a daycare should always have a vet that they have registered. But that means that they're also really are a clean establishment, because a vet's not going to let you go into a place where they're unclean and just crappy, and keeping a dog space clean is a full-time job, like very intense. So that means that they're signed off by the vets, which is good. And that means that they also probably have a good relationship with them, which means that, God forbid something happened, that dog would be taken care of very well and very quickly gotten the care it needed because they have a good relationship with them. So that's a big green flag in my book.
So altogether, it looks like this is a pretty good business. This is one where, there's not a lot of room for you to come in and make an income and also hire someone to run the business for you. But if you're someone who wants to run a business like this, if you would love to be in charge of a bunch of dogs, and would like to be in the dog training space with an established business, that's a pretty good income. $125,000 where it's already at, and you've got a team to manage a lot of the work for you. It's an established business. It's open to seller financing, as you saw, which means that as someone maybe just starting out, you could negotiate something where you don't have to pay all of the money up front. So you might be able to get in a little bit easier that way. I think this would be a good lifestyle business for someone just looking to stay in the pocket and be involved in that way.
If you want to leave corporate and you like to be involved, I really don't think for this price point, there's going to be a lot of businesses where you're not going to be involved. This is a great exit opportunity for a corporate job where maybe you're just not feeling that this is a great opportunity, I feel like.
Here's a veterinary practice. What do you think about that?
I love those.
Yeah, let's look at this one. So now we're looking at an established vet practice that's for sale in Palm Beach County, Florida. So this business is doing $726,000 in revenue. Major red flag right off the bat, I gotta say though, is that it doesn't list the cash flow or the EBITDA at all. So we honestly have no idea what it's profiting.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you happen to know off the top of your head what a typical profit margin for a veterinary practice would be? I can look into it.
I don't know off the top because again, it varies depending on the area. I know that vets are normally get a base salary that is, a good base salary. They get paid well for their stuff most of the time, but then a lot of vet clinics will do commission based off of it. So however much you bring it off, because everybody has certain clients. So you develop a client base and you're making a cut off of everything that your clients are billed for. So, that does lead to vets sometimes recommending stuff that are extra, but at the end of the day, who a lot of people do that in the industry. I'm not knocking it. But it's percentage based off of that. So whether you're getting 5, 10, 15% off of the top, sometimes upwards of 30, I believe, of whatever their total was, that gets tacked on month to month.
Looks like veterinary practices tend to have fairly low profitability from what I was seeing, anywhere from 7% to up to maybe 18, 20%, something like that. So honestly, very low. I don't know if that's accurate that I found, but if that is the case, $726,000, let's be generous and say it's 20% of 726,000. So
the number always, I feel like that number does not account for the veterinary salary, because vets always pay themselves a salary as well on top of whatever's left. So the cash flow normally won't include, from my understanding, from what my sister and have told me, even the owner is on a salary and the cash flow at the end of the year is not reflected. Her salary is not involved in her cash flow. So she may be bringing in more than that, but she's still on a salary. So I think when they're saying 20%, I believe that would be reflected of after
the salary.
So and vets normally own the clinic. So for them, they're being paid already. They're getting their commission cut, and then that cash flow is usually either distributed as a year-end bonus, substantial fund for whatever they need, or expansion projects. Or if the owner, I'm sure the owner could just, okay, it's for me.
And so this is something where if you wanted to own a veterinary practice as a business owner, we did look into this at one point. I believe the rules, you do have to have an actual veterinary practitioner on staff or in the ownership. Is that correct?
No, not. There are 7 states, I believe, where you do not have to have a vet with you to make the deal. However, the ones that we talked to wanted a vet involved because they were also the owner operator as the vet, and there'd be no vet left. Which if you're buying one, that's a big concern. And obviously I tried to get my sister to move down and she was like, maybe not right now, but it's something where like, if I had my sister involved, or if you knew a vet that you were friends with and they were like, yeah, I'm trying to get a practice and maybe get a couple, start a network, I would be okay with that, because I would know that, number one, I can't do the job. So I'm fine making 8 to 18% at the end of the day, taking a cut of that, because I'm essentially just going to maybe help set up the bookkeeping and stuff. But the actual work, they are the ones who deserve the payment for that. And I'm fine taking whatever's left, because I'm probably not going to be involved because I don't know what to do.
That being said, if you are having to pay a vet for something like this and you're having to pay some kind of debt service to acquire a business like this, that's not going to really leave much here. I mean, for an asking price of $450,000, if the margins are, 20% is or so of what they're saying the gross revenue is, you're not going to be covering that debt service very well. It's a pretty high asking price for what that is.
And again, I think they're assuming they're selling to a vet. If we scroll down, they might be saying vets only, which is, they didn't give anything.
They don't include much information. The more I look at this one, the more I think we should look at a different one. Let's see if we can find a different veterinary practice.
Is a well-established county, though. That would be one where you could probably do fairly well if you had a good. That animal hospital's been up there a while.
Animal hospital. It lists the cash flow as well. This one would be good. So this is Pasco County, Florida. Asking price $994,000. The cash flow is $323,000. So it's about a 3x multiple, just under, or rather just over
Mhm.
a 3x multiple. So that's pretty standard for a business this size. It's, I think the average for small businesses under $500,000 is something like 2.28x multiple. So it's a little bit higher than the average, but that being said, it's a 3x multiple is fairly standard at this level. And so if that's what you're paying for this, you're getting a decent deal here. There's also $90,000 in inventory, it says, and another $260,000 in equipment. So altogether, this is a pretty fair asking price for this one, I would say. And it's in Pasco County, again, booming area. 3,486 active clients. That's a big client list.
63% retention rate, very good. It means that whoever's involved, the staff and the technicians and the veterinarian, assuming there's one, I guess, by that language, have a very good relationship with the people, because that is, I would argue, I'd say 75 to 80% of your vet practice is going to be the relationship, because if you do a great job but they just don't like you, they're not coming back. So
yeah. So Hannah has been going to the same vet for a while for Bella, and she continues going back to that vet even though it is now very far from where she lives and totally out of the way from anywhere that she goes, just because she knows the vets and the vet techs there and everything, even though they changed ownership while she's been there and a lot of things changed, but she knows a lot of the vet techs and everything and feels comfortable there. So I could just echo, like, from what I've seen, like the relationship aspect of it is very important for the typical client.
This one, as much as anything, if you own it and you're bringing in a vet, the staff has to be on board with you, because if they leave you, they take the clients with them, and you're like, well, they're not the vets, so they're not doing the work. No, but they're so involved in the process, and they have those, like you said with Hannah, if they leave, the clients will go with them. I've seen it happen before. So this is that's the pet industry in general, though. I'd say that's the theme, is that it's so relationship heavy that you can't afford to not keep almost always keep the majority on when you take over.
One thing I see in here in the description is that it's SBA ready and eligible. So we always like to see that. What that means is that you, as someone who was thinking about buying this pet hospital, if you wanted to, and if you didn't have $994,000 laying around, which I don't think you do. Most people don't. It's a lot of money to come up with at once. And even if you did, you might not want to spend all of it risking it on something that you don't know for sure is going to pay off. So what the SBA does is they will give you a loan with really, really good terms where you can go buy this business, this $994,000 business, with only 10% down. So maybe you're someone who's been working for a long time, and you don't want to use that down payment to buy a house because the housing market freaking sucks. And so you'd rather take that $90,000 that you saved up or so, and that you've been making over the course of a few years working another job, and deploy it on a business. You could genuinely put down 10% of this business and acquire a business that makes $300,000 with $90,000. And then you pay back the rest of that loan over the course of 10 years. So the SBA makes it really accessible for someone to buy a business like this.
Yeah, no, and it's like we've always said, it's hard to get that SBA to approve you, which means that this business, the numbers add up and they are legitimate if the SBA is putting their name behind it. So that's a very good sign all in all. I think it says Dimitri. I think we've seen him on a couple of things, but if you're interested, call Dimitri. He'll get you right.
Grant, what's up, man? I see Grant is joining in here. He said, you don't?
About our comment about not having the money just sitting around.
Oh, man. Grant is my business partner. So now the secret's out. He knows I don't have $994,000 to buy a pet hospital.
I mean, look, if he wants to, if he's got it like that, man, yo, let's go.
If anyone does have $994,000 set aside to buy a pet hospital, I know we're talking about a very niche crowd here, but just put it in the comments. Let us know. Cool position to be in. You should buy this business.
Lots of pet insurance now coming through. People doing that more and more. The pet industry is very resilient.
Grant says brokies. Fair enough. I see where you're coming from. Got to get our cash flow up. But that being said, if you are listening and you feel like a brokey because you cannot buy this business, again, we'll go back to the point that it says it is SBA ready and eligible if you would like to take a loan to buy this. This is how a lot of people buy businesses. It's a lot of money to come up with. And the Small Business Administration does not want good established businesses to fail, because that means if this business fails, that means 3,486 clients and their 4,087 pets will not have a place to go get care. And that's a very inefficient thing to happen to any kind of marketplace. So the SBA makes it as easy as possible for people to go and buy businesses. If you put together a good plan and you have the actual experience to do something like this, you can genuinely go and acquire a business that you might feel like you have no possible way to acquire and really change the income that you're making, put yourself in a totally different position. That's one thing we love about this. It's a really cool industry. I mean, it's a really cool area to look into just because there's not really any other vehicle that you can do that with. I think real estate investing used to be like that, but it's not necessarily the case anymore.
No.
It depends on the housing market. So this is a really good way to really get your wealth up in a quick way.
Yeah, and a note on these sorts of clinics that I've done a lot of research on. So I chose to look at some vet clinics, and I focused in on a small area of Tampa, like maybe about a 10-mile strip of Tampa. I think there were like 7 vet clinics. They were all at 4.3 or higher stars. Seemed like they were very popular, active Facebook pages, and they were all in business. And I think it's one of those rare industries where just because there's a competitor down the street does not mean you're not going to have it. Because honestly, if they're full or they can't get you in, you're going to go to the next person. So it's an industry where competition doesn't necessarily drive you away. One thing I did notice was the corporate kind of mass-owned clinics that didn't have that personal touch, which just seems like this is a personal clinic, were the ones that were kind of review bombed. People had a very less favorable outcome on them. So if you can keep that homegrown system in place, people are far more likely to trust you than they are with a big box kind of store.
Yeah, I think that's the key with a lot of businesses and maintaining a good culture. But I think that is especially the case with something like this. And I mean, there's a team of 7 employees with this particular one. That's fairly small for the size of this business. Actually, that's smaller than I would have guessed. This is a business doing almost $1.2 million a year in sales, and doing a decent amount in cash flow as a result. So, this is supporting 7 employees. You would be taking on that team if you were running this business. And so if you're someone who's thinking about this, that's something to think about. People will buy a business as a first-time owner, and that leaves them managing a team. So I think you should be someone that feels like you're capable of running a team. Someone who is decent with people, who feels like you can motivate people, create a good culture. I like to say the 3 C's of creating a good culture are consistency, caring, and cultivating. So if you feel like you're someone that can do that for people and actually support that team, that's what it's going to take to run a business like this.
I'm going to just say you have to be great with people. You have to be a people person. You have to love people all the time. And I'm being a bit over the top, but you are, this is an industry where majority of people are going to come in for a checkup. And then the other 30%, they're going to come in with an emergency, or maybe what they think is an emergency, and going to be in quite the state, as is natural when something happens that you don't understand with your pet. So you're going to need to, not that you're going to be the one on the front lines all the time, but if you're buying this thing, you're going to want to be involved in the day-to-day to gain that trust of the people who work there. And managing those people and doing it successfully and learning how to is going to get you the respect from the people working with you, but also being able to face down somebody whose animal's in a condition and being like, all right, how can I help you and how do I manage this, within my capabilities? So it's not for the faint of heart.
No, yeah, you got to really care a lot. And I think the interesting thing about this, I've heard this from people who are vets, and I would love to hear you weigh in on this. I think I've maybe heard this from my stepsister who's training to be a vet right now, or someone else. But a lot of people will get into this industry because they're like, I don't like people. I just want to deal with animals. And then they're like, oh, you really got to deal with people in this industry. You got to love animals, but you've also got to really love dealing with people because you're constantly dealing with people in one of their most anxious, most like defensive states possible. Dealing with something someone and something that they care about deeply in their family.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not a vet. I just worked in the dog space, and so with my mom as well. And then my sister's a vet, and her fiance is a vet. So my mom also kind of told us how she built her business models the same way my sister kind of approaches it with her work. Everybody says the same thing. I hate people, like you said, I hate people, love dogs. So I'm going to be in this industry. My mom goes, yes, but who has the credit card? At the end of the day, you got to be nice to the person with the credit card.
I've seen some people where I feel like they do give their dog their credit card. The people that have the dogs that run around in like the little suits. My girl and I were watching Below Deck. I don't know if you've ever seen that show. Wild show. And there was this family that came onto one of the yachts, and they had a dog that was wearing a tuxedo. I feel like that's the type of family that gives their dog their credit card. So I guess you got to
Louis Vuitton leash set.
Louis Vuitton leash set.
Yeah.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah. So you have to really, it's the stereotype. I hate people. I love dogs, but don't forget who's caring for that animal at the end of the day. And they probably love it as much as you do, even though you only get it for 4 hours. So, my sister has a variety of people who walk into that office in a variety of conditions, and she's always learning to love the people at the other end of the leash, we always say.
That's
and then,
funny. Who has the credit card?
Yeah, really. Because,
Another thing here, one thing they might be losing some people on is, it's great that the owner is willing to provide some training for a transition. But if you're telling me you can transition an entire animal hospital with 7 employees over the course of 2 weeks, I'm calling BS. I don't think you could effectively do that. What do you think about that, Ryan? Do you think you could teach me how to run an entire animal hospital in 2 weeks?
I think you could barely get somebody to understand a painting company after 2 weeks. And that's not to say painting is simple, but I'm saying with a painting company, at least it's here's how we get the product, here's how we schedule it, here's how we go out and do it. And that alone would take a minimum of 2 weeks. And even then I'd still want more. This would be, unless they didn't state this, but if they're trying to sell to a network or a hospital established brand, then maybe. But if they're selling to a bigger player, they're not going to care about your operations. They're going to just put theirs in. I would want to know, are they willing to stay on at a cost as a consulting fee or whatever? Because obviously I'm going to be that. And other business interests, we don't see that as often. And I want to know your takes on that, because I certainly have mine.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a take on this. I think that's a big red flag. Like if you want to give up if you want to sell the business because you have other business interests, the only thing that tells me is that you don't value this business interest as much as something else. So why should I? So it tells me you think that this is not worth your time anymore. And if it's not worth your time, whoever you are, doesn't say who the actual seller of this is. But if you don't think it's worth your time, then why would I read this and think it's worth my time?
Yeah. Or, wouldn't you sell it for less then? If you're like, I'm not interested, I'll just sell it for something and just kind of cash out,
Sure. So
I'm right there with you, though.
Not the best marketing on there. I would try to come up with a better reason. If you are someone who's thinking about selling your business, a little note to take there is you want to think about the perspective of whoever will be buying it and think about how they'll perceive that. Let's move on to another one, though.
Yeah,
let's do one more. All together, though, takeaways from that one. I think it's a decent deal, and it's SBA ready. So I think it could be right for the right buyer. what do we got here? So we looked at a grooming and resort. We looked at a veterinary business. Let's try to round it out with something a little bit different. Exotic pet shop.
Whoa, buddy.
You want to look at that one?
Yeah, let's check.
All
that
right,
one
so
out.
we've
How about
got
that?
an exotic pet shop for sale here.
Wow.
So they most likely are selling things like bearded dragons and other related things, maybe monkeys. I've seen ones that sell monkeys
Oh
before.
God.
They're asking $150,000 for an exotic pet shop.
Hey, is that Grant? Is that actually what it says? Scroll down. Oh God.
Developed pet allergies, need to sell
Is that actually
immediately.
what it said?
I think he's just messing around.
Oh, okay. I was like, that's a level of transparency again.
That would
probably
be funny. That would be funny. But yeah, this one is I think he was saying as a different reason for the other one, a better reason to come
That's
up
hilarious.
with. But an exotic pet shop, what's your take on this? Would you want to own an exotic pet shop?
Personally, no. That sounds like a lot of work, and I like my pets. I like other people's pets. I don't want to have to lock up a store with a bunch of pets that I hope they're going to be there in the morning, like, and then having to learn all the different stuff about them. That's just not as interesting to me, but I could imagine that somebody would be interested.
I'm just curious to know what kinds of animals that this has. I mean,
breed.
oh wow. They specialize in selling reptiles and other exotics. They're live food and all the supplies. So yeah, I've seen stores like this. There was one in, I don't know if it's still around. There was one in Jacksonville where I'm from called Blazing Reptiles. Small little store. They had all kinds of like bearded dragons and other crazy lizards and snakes that some people with a different perspective on pet ownership than I might buy. They had a gator in there at one point, like a small, I don't know. It didn't feel like it. They had a small spider monkey. That actually had me interested at one point. I don't know. As a little kid, I went in there and I kind of wanted to get the spider monkey.
No, definitely. Like before, the horrors of the world. Yes, the coolest pet ever.
Exactly. But yeah, altogether, I mean, if exotic pets are your thing, this might be one to look at. It's been around since 2005, and it's grown to a staggering $175,000 in sales since then. I'm trashing it there, but it's for someone just operating this on their own, $47,000 in cash flow. This could be a nice little chunk of change to add if you are really interested in the area.
Well, how many staff members do they have? Two. Let's see what they're.
So they got
two.
They have 2 employees, depending on if the employees are staying on or not. Obviously, part of that, the difference between that 172,000 a year and the 47 is going to be what those employees are getting paid and some of the costs of it. So, I mean, maybe if one of the employees wasn't staying on and you were kind of like running the business a little bit, you might be able to make a full-time income with this.
Yeah, this kind of feels like a very partial, like a partial own. I feel like this person isn't terribly involved.
I would agree with that. I'd be surprised if they are.
Which, I mean, hey, if you're working 10, 12 hours a week and you're pulling in $47K a year for that much work, I can't really fault you for that. It's pretty good haul for the work.
As a deal in and of itself, $47,000 in cash flow and an asking price of $150,000. This is expensive to me. A 3x multiple, honestly, sometimes is even on the higher end for something really small like this. And this is slightly above a 3 times multiple is what they're asking. So I think this is very overpriced. For something doing as little as $47,000 in cash flow, I don't necessarily think it's even reasonable to ask for more than like a 2, if that. I think you're going to be lucky to get like a 1.5 times multiple on a business like this, simply because you're selling a job at the end of the day. You're not selling something that you could put someone making a full-time income in charge of and have them run it in a reasonably good way. And so this is not one that I would look to buy. I think a lot of people when they look into buying a business, think a little small like this, and they think, well, it's something I can just easily get my foot into. And if you were going the SBA route with this, you would only have to put $15,000 down, and you'd make $47,000 potentially in cash flow that year. So you could make your money back if the two employees are running it entirely, but I really doubt that's the case. I think this is something you would have to have a fairly heavy hand in, at least a part-time hand in. And I think it's just a little small, and there'd be a big risk that it kind of just falls apart without the proper ownership management.
Yeah, Grant in the chat saying the money in these businesses is the breeding, but if they're just a retail aspect, then no. So if the owner is the one doing the breeding or facilitating that sort of thing, you lose that. Well, I guess your big revenue stream is gone at that point if you don't know how to properly breed these animals or don't know anyone who does. So also $6,000 inventory seems light.
I thought that too. Yeah. I wonder if the inventory, so there's 6,000 in inventory, 15,000 in FF&E. The FF&E, I think, even sounds a little bit light. I guess you could get away with that amount. It sounds kind of light to me. It sounds like a really small store. The 6,000 in inventory, if that's the animals that they have, they've got almost nothing for sale. I find that very surprising. That just sounds incredibly low. Especially some of these exotic pets they're usually pretty expensive. Like I remember the spider monkey that I wanted as a kid when I was like a little kid walking into one of these was like $1,000 for a spider monkey. So it sounds like they don't really have many pets around. I don't know, but if you did have the desire to get into the breeding side of this and you had a really good specialized knowledge of how to do that, then I would agree with what Grant said. I think you could make a pretty good bag doing that. He said, I have an acquaintance who breeds snakes, wild numbers, and big money. Interesting.
Why did we go get a degree? We could have just been breeding snakes the last 2 years.
I will tell you what, I don't know if there's an amount of money you could pay me to be a snake breeder. I hate snakes. I really hate snakes. But there's a lot of people out there that seem to dig snakes. So if you like snakes and you have an affinity for breeding them and you're batshit insane.
How many subscribers do we have to get on your YouTube channel for you to go and pet a snake?
Get 100? Back to me on that one.
Okay, 100 subscribers on YouTube.
No, I'm already at 100, and I would
1,000
pet a snake. No, wouldn't do it for 1,000. Okay. No way. Maybe there's a number, but I can't think of it right now. I do not like snakes at all. But it's very interesting to hear that there's a lot of money in it. That doesn't surprise me. Because I feel like there's just like a crazy, weird underground market out there where people are trading snakes for whatever reason. Maybe taking them to shows or something. I know like people will train them and be able to like put them on their back and make a little bit of an entertainment thing out of it. There's probably snake collectors out there. I don't know if I would want to deal with those people personally, but that's interesting. I would love to hear the numbers on that at some point.
I believe my experience with snake people, and I'm saying people who own snakes that I have met in the what I'll call the wild, meaning outside of a contained place. I was invited by some friends to go to one of those Renaissance Festival fair things. Never been before. Wow, that's where I'll leave that.
I always wanted to check one of those out. Honestly, those seem interesting.
Wow, we'll go. Lots of people doing the snake thing in the Ren Fair thing. Like it was a whole like a meetup.
And they have a lot of those Renaissance festivals now. Those are a big draw. From what I've heard, like people, I know a lot of people who have been to those, and they always say like they're a lot of fun. Those have really ramped up in the last like 5 or 10 years. I think like they have those all over the place. So maybe a snake breeder. I mean, maybe you've got a little bit of a regular market there with the Renaissance festivals and things like that. Zoos, things like that. You can sell them there. And I think there's an interesting market out there of people who do want to own snakes as a pet. But man, what a scary job. Breeding snakes. Yikes. You could not pay me to do it, folks. You could not pay me. But let's leave it off on that one. I don't want to talk about snakes anymore. I'm going to get the heebie-jeebies. But if you've been tuning in and you've been thinking about selling a business, hopefully you learned something about how to market your business when it comes time to sell it. If you're thinking about buying a business, hopefully you learned what to look for and how to assess a potential deal. I've been one of your hosts, Brody Vinson.
And I've been Ryan Santo. And Brody, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, pretty much anything. TikTok, if you're watching on there. Pretty much anywhere. You can find Ryan on
just LinkedIn, Ryan Santo MBA. Just shoot me a message saying, "Hey, I saw you on the show, and if you want to chat, happy to talk more about whatever it is."
Send us a message. Send us questions that you have about the process of buying and selling businesses. Please don't go out and breed snakes. I don't know if I can associate with you if you do, but props to you if you are making boatloads of money on it, like Grant's acquaintance. And until next time, we do this every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or roughly around there. And we'll be probably picking a niche like this every once in a while just to dive into a particular type of market, get into some of the intricacies of it. Today, obviously, was pet services. So for someone who's very into pets and wants to make money doing that, this is a really interesting area to explore, and one that Ryan's family has done well in and really enjoys being in. And hopefully you've learned some things about that. And until next time,
I've been Ryan.
And I've been Brody. Hope you enjoy your evening and the rest of your week. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.
What a great show we did with this